Hey everyone, welcome to another Facebook Live. It is Friday, that means, and it is the first day of May. So happy May Day, everyone. Can't believe it's already May. Seems like just yesterday we were in April. But here in New Hampshire, the weather is actually starting to warm up. It's supposed to be very nice this weekend, almost in the 70s. Oh my goodness. And a lot of the trees and flowers are starting to bloom around here, or at least get buds on them. So that's kind of cool. So it's starting to feel a little bit more like spring. Unfortunately, today it is pouring out, and it was yesterday as well. So it's been a little rainy, but that happens in the spring, I guess. So no big deal. Hope you like the new angle. Switching up my standing desk here, so I'm on the opposite side of the room, so I can actually look out the window, and instead of staring at the wall. But yeah, so for today's Facebook Live, I want to talk about fairly common, not common, but a fairly hot topic, and that is the gut. The research around the gut, gut health, its impact on your own health and other aspects of your health is always seems to be evolving, and changing, and rapidly changing. So I'm always of interest when I hear experts talk about gut and new research that's coming out around the gut, because we learn more and more that its impact on kind of all aspects of our health. So it's super interesting stuff. And because it's such a new area of research, there's often things that we hear at certain times that are said to be good for our gut, and then the next time around, all of a sudden, it's not good for our gut. So, and this is one of those situations where I was listening to the Nourish Balance Thrive podcast, and they had Chris had on Lucy Mailing, who is a researcher in the microbiome and gut area, and she does an excellent job of communicating information about the gut. And she's been on the podcast a couple of times now. I really enjoy listening to her on the podcast. And actually, if you're also a supporter of Nourish Balance Thrive on Patreon and you join their private forum, she's on the forum as well and has contributed a lot of content to the forum there. So just a little shout out to the Nourish Balance Thrive forum and all the great stuff that can you can get there for free. Just a little small contribution to Nourish Balance Thrive. So. But I wanted to go. She did a presentation that you can find on Facebook that I've linked to in the description of the live, around 12 misconceptions or myths about the gut, and all 12 are very fascinating. But there were 3 that were very common, that I've heard a number of times before and believed myself, and that stood out to me that I wanted to talk about today, just because I hear them all the time. And it would just be useful information, I think, to share. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional at all. You should not take what I say as medical advice. So if your doctor or physician or practitioner tells you to do these things, I'm not telling you not to do them. You should have a discussion with your doctor or physician about this. But I just want to convey some of this stuff to you so you're a little bit more informed about some of these topics. So the first one is something that's fairly common, is that people will take probiotics to help colonize their gut with better bacteria. And it's very common for people to do that and say that they're taking probiotics to improve their gut health. And maybe they do improve their gut health, but they certainly don't colonize your gut with the bacteria that are in those probiotics. So don't think that just because you're taking a certain strain of bacteria in a probiotic that's going to take up residency in your gut after you take it. So probiotics will alter your immune system, perhaps for the better, perhaps for worse. They can outcompete pathogens. So if you're concerned about a hazardous gut bacteria taking up residence in your gut, it might be useful in that situation. And they can alter gene expression, again, may be useful in some situations. But do not think that just because you take a probiotic that whatever species of bacteria is in that probiotic is going to actually take up residency in your gut. So that's myth number one that she debunks. The other one, and this is one that I've heard a lot of people talk about, and I myself have done in the past, because I was told by practitioners that this is what you should do, is after you take a round of antibiotics, you should take probiotics. And the reason being is because many, if not all, antibiotics can destroy all the healthy gut bacteria in your gut, and kind of leave it like a barren waste zone. And so in order to repopulate that with beneficial bacteria, you should take probiotics afterwards. And we just discussed a second ago how probiotics do not colonize in the gut. So that's issue number one with this suggestion. But there's actually been studies that show if you take probiotics after antibiotics, that it actually delayed the return of the native microbiota that were in your gut beforehand. So it actually took you longer to repopulate your gut with the native species that were there before you took the antibiotics if you took probiotics. So Lucy does a really good job in the podcast and in her talk online about describing this whole situation via a metaphor of thinking your gut like a lush rainforest ecosystem. Like if you think of a rainforest, there's a lot of different plants and trees and animals and bugs and just a very lush ecosystem with lots of different thriving organisms in that ecosystem. And then when you take, that's kind of like your gut before antibiotics. And then when you take antibiotics, that kind of becomes like a barren wasteland afterwards, right? So all this thriving species get knocked out, they go extinct, they go away. Like think of a giant forest fire and what a forest looks like after a giant forest fire, right? It's all black and there's no life around, and just it looks like a barren wasteland afterwards. And that's basically what happens to your gut after you take antibiotics. So when you take probiotics after your antibiotics, you're basically introducing invasive species that are going to they could perhaps prevent the detrimental bacteria from taking up residence in your gut. So, for example, it might help prevent C. diff. So if you're in a hospital situation, you're taking antibiotics, you have a high risk of contracting C. diff, it might make sense in that case that after antibiotics you take probiotics to prevent something like the C. diff from taking up residency in your gut. But otherwise, it's going to, like we said before, delay the onset of the native species coming back. So instead, what she suggests is to support the health of the soil, like in the rainforest situation, so that a healthy environment will, a healthy soil would encourage the growth of healthy, trees and forests and plants and native species. Just like if you take care of your the soil of your gut, it would support the healthy growth of the native microbes. So taking some probiotics to support the growth of, and we'll talk about probiotics in a second. Prebiotics, which are different than probiotics, to support the growth of your native microbes as opposed to trying to populate the gut with some foreign probiotic microbes. There is one solution that is not very popular for a variety of reasons, that is actually probably the best solution to this situation where you have to take antibiotics, you destroy all the bacteria in your gut, and now what do you want to do? You want to repopulate it back to where it was before you took the antibiotics. And the best solution to that is to do a fecal transplant. So basically, it sounds disgusting, but this is becoming very popular, and I'm predicting that it will be fairly standard treatment at some point. But basically, you collect your poop, which contains a snapshot of your microbiome in a healthy state. You freeze that and you preserve it. And then when you have to take something like antibiotics, which is going to destroy the your gut bacteria and kill it off, you can take what's called a fecal transplant. It's basically packaging that fecal matter that you froze and preserved as a some kind of pill, or you can do it rectally as well, and you use that to repopulate the gut. Basically, that's the best solution to repopulating your gut microbiome after you've had something like taken something like antibiotics and destroyed all the native species there, because you're basically repopulating it with what back to a state that it was beforehand, and is your own gut microbiome signature. So that's probably the best solution. Again, it's not widely used today, but I have a feeling that in the future will be something that's fairly common and going to be a great tool. So that's myth number 2, which is basically taking probiotics after antibiotics is one, not beneficial, and it could be harmful in some cases as well. And then the last one is prebiotics. So prebiotics are basically food for the little bugs in your gut, right? This is the stuff that the bugs in your gut feed off of. And the theory here is that you provide prebiotics to your gut microbiome, and this helps promote the growth of healthy bacteria in your gut. And this is true, but there's various ways to get prebiotics, right? Some prebiotics come from the food that we eat. Some prebiotics are very rich in the foods that we eat, and other people have tried supplementing with prebiotics in order to promote the growth of healthy gut bacteria. And one of the popular prebiotics that I've heard of a number of times that people often take or have taken in the past to help promote the growth of their gut bacteria is resistant starch, in particular raw potato starch. Basically, you just take a teaspoon or so of that stuff and swallow it, and it's supposed to help feed those gut bugs. Actually, there's research that shows that raw tubers led to lower alpha diversity of the gut microbiome. So it actually decreased the diversity of the types of gut bacteria in your gut. So instead of helping promote the growth of various different gut bugs, it actually declined the number of gut bugs in your gut. So it appears that taking raw potato starch is not a good way of promoting diversity in your gut. And in the same study, they actually showed that cooked starches, like cooked tubers, actually increased diversity. Basically, the best type of prebiotics to take to promote the growth of gut bacteria is going to be stuff that we're ancestrally familiar with. So, for example, when you cook a potato or cook rice and then cool it, this increases the amount of resistant starch in that food item. And obviously we're ancestrally familiar with eating these types of food items, right? The prebiotics that come from food, we would have done this. We would have cooked and cooled food for hundreds of thousands of years at this point. So if you're looking to get more prebiotics in your diet, definitely get it from food, and in particular, try to get it in a way that we would have gotten it evolutionarily in the past, right? So we would have cooked potatoes, we would have cooked rice, we would have eaten other types of vegetables that are rich in probiotics and prebiotics. We would have eaten a lot of fermented foods and that type of stuff. So turn to food when you can for your prebiotics and probiotics, and stay away from the raw potato starch type of prebiotics. So those were the 3 myths that I wanted to cover today. Like I said, there was 12, so there's a bunch more that Lucy goes over. So if you're interested in learning more about that, see the link in the description of the Facebook Live. And you can go and listen to the podcast on Nourish Balance Thrive. And if you go to the podcast notes, there's a link to her talk, which is a little bit longer, online on Facebook that you can actually watch live. So, and that has all her slides and everything. So if you're really truly interested in all that stuff, you can deep dive into that too. With that, I appreciate everyone watching. I hope everyone had a good week. If you have any questions, as always, comment here, send me a direct message, and reach out, and happy to help. Do have some room for some coaching clients. So if you're interested in some coaching, please reach out to me, schedule a call, send me an email, send me a direct message, and we can chat. And encourage everyone to go and sign up for the newsletter. As always, go to my page, my homepage, rjbhealth.coach. At the top, you'll see a link to sign up for the newsletter. Click that, and you can get on the newsletter and get all this information every week delivered to your inbox. And with that, I'll sign off. I hope everyone has a good week, and stay healthy and enjoy the weekend. Talk to you next week.